709 Big 550 KTRS. We welcome in the audience who is watching on KPLR 11.2. That's channel 187 on Charter. You're watching a live broadcast of a local radio show, KTRS Radio. Don't forget our app. You can watch the show and listen to the show on any device you have. STLtoday.com is the website. Also, KTRS.com. And, of course, always 550 on your AM dial. This week in St. Louis, they're having a Churchill symposium. The Churchill Museum from Fulton, Missouri is putting it on here at Washington University. And the professor of political science at the University of Alaska, Dr. James Muller, joins us. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here.
We were talking off the air. You are not a native of Alaska. You've only been there 38 years.
34.
34 years. I apologize. And yesterday, it was colder here in St. Louis than it was in Alaska.
That's right. We got here after 2 flights, and it was colder here.
Colder here. And you are an expert when it comes to Winston Churchill.
Well, I've been thinking about him quite a lot ever since the 70s when he had his 100th birthday.
And we should say that this symposium is going on at Washington University, and you're giving a speech?
Well, the symposium is tomorrow,
right?
And it starts at 9:30, and there are a lot of interesting people coming. Larry Arnn, who's the president of Hillsdale College, is one of the speakers.
Right.
And there are others who have written books about Churchill, and I'll be talking too.
And it starts at 9. It's free, and it's open to the public.
Starts at 9:30.
9:30.
And it's open to the public. People should look on the website of the National Churchill Museum, because if they want to register for lunch and that sort of thing,
Gotcha.
There's a charge.
Gotcha. Okay, good. What is it about Winston Churchill that got you so excited back in the 1970s?
You know, I'm too young to remember anything except the funeral, which was when I was 11.
Okay.
But I got intrigued about him by reading his books. And I think for a lot of younger people, either hearing stories about him, and they're wonderful stories, and some of them are even true, and or reading his books or listening to his speeches, which you can still do,
right,
is often the way people get hooked. And
why? What is it about him that hooks you?
He uses the English language beautifully. That's part of it.
Right.
And he tells the truth, and often in a colorful and memorable way.
Right.
You know, people often forget that Churchill won the Nobel Prize for Literature in the 50s, and his career as a writer goes back even further than his political career, which lasted 60 years. He started out writing a novel when he was in his 20s, and then by the time he was elected to Parliament, age 26, he had written 6 books. And he didn't slow down the rest of his life. So the books he wrote are in 34 volumes, and he wrote newspaper columns, thousands and thousands of them, and his collected papers are about 1.5 million documents in 2,000 boxes.
When did he die?
He died in 1965, aged almost 91.
And a lot of people drive to the Lake of the Ozarks every weekend and have no idea that they pass massive amounts of history as they drive through Fulton, Missouri. Thank you very much.
Right.
That's where the Iron Curtain speech was.
That's right. That was in 1946. And in 1996... I was here in Missouri because we had a 50th anniversary commemoration of that speech. Margaret Thatcher gave a speech then, and we talked about the importance of that Iron Curtain speech.
And Harry Truman invited him here to give that speech.
That's right.
That was the plan.
Right, and Truman didn't know exactly what he was going to say, but he knew pretty well that what Churchill was going to do was a big reset, because we had been the enemy of Nazi Germany, and the Soviet Union had been our ally throughout World War II.
Right.
And Churchill, one of whose, it's very much to his credit that Churchill is one of the few people who was equally against tyranny, whether it was Nazi tyranny or communist tyranny. And he knew after World War II that what we needed to do was watch out for the Soviet Union. And the announcement of the Cold War wasn't so much a preemptive strike as it was an attempt to help the American people and other people in the West know that the Soviet Union really couldn't be our friend, given the way it treated its citizens and what its geopolitical ambitions were.
And that was the beginning of the Cold War.
And that was really a hard lesson for people to swallow.
But that was it. That when he gave that speech, that was
kind of the beginning of it.
That's the Iron Curtain speech.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. James Muller, our guest, he'll be at tomorrow, Washington University, 9:30 for a Churchill symposium. Here's my question for you. So Churchill is voted out of office at the end of World War II, while they're dividing up the world, and he's not at that conference. What does the world change? Does it look differently? Does Berlin get split up differently? Does the post-war look differently if Churchill is at that conference and kept in office by the people of England?
Well, there's no question that the years between 1945 and 1951 would have looked a bit different if Churchill had been in office. But we can't really know exactly how. He would have faced many of the same challenges that Attlee, faced as prime minister afterwards. Britain was bankrupt. Britain was in a terrible situation after the war. They'd spent pretty much everything they had. They were in debt to the United States and to others.
Right.
And the British people needed a chance to recover and catch their breath. That's why Churchill's party lost. He didn't lose, of course. He was reelected by a huge margin, but he was out of office.
Well,
his party went down the tubes.
Right, yeah.
And he did come back in 1951 as prime minister.
Oh,
and
really? I didn't know that.
Yes, he was prime minister again for 4 years in the early 50s.
Yeah,
till 1955. And, of course, we know a lot about what he thought because he was leader of the opposition in Parliament, and he was often speaking and telling us and so on. But he was also, in the first instance, spending his time painting and making speeches like the one in Fulton.
Right.
And other important speeches he made in those years in Europe about European unity and so on.
Did he die penniless?
No, he actually died in a fairly good position, and that was largely because of the royalties for the books he wrote, especially The History of the English-Speaking Peoples, the last work that was published in 4 volumes, and above all, his 6-volume memoirs of World War II, the Second World War.
And you're saying that is a great read?
It is a great read, but boy, is it a long book. And 2,400 pages in 6 volumes.
Yeah.
But one of the amazing things, is that when Churchill was in his 20s, he was writing amazing books already. And the book I'm talking about tomorrow, The River War, is about the reconquest of the Sudan by Britain in 1898 under Kitchener, where Churchill was in a cavalry charge, a very dangerous situation as a young cavalry officer in his 20s, fighting an Islamist rebellion in the Sudan.
Wow.
And
that guy led an interesting life.
The book he wrote about that, The River War, has been out of print for more than 100 years, and I'm editing the new edition that's coming out.
Wow. So. When you're finished, will you come back and talk about it?
I'd love to.
Yeah, all right. Dr. James Milner, professor of political science at the University of Alaska, is here in town for the Churchill Symposium at the Kemper Art Museum on the Washington University campus. Go to the Churchill Museum information for more, but it starts at 9:30 tomorrow for part of the symposium. Doctor, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
You got it. 8:19 here, Big 550 KTRS.